In the movies Inside Out and Inside Out 2, which are Disney Pixar movies about an adolescent girl named Riley, the stories are told from the perspective of her personified emotions inside her brain. So most of the movie is not showing Riley, although she's in it. Most of the movie is showing her emotions, these personified emotions, as she goes through this journey. In particular, her family moves from Minnesota to San Francisco. And so all the emotions that creates in a young girl are personified: joy, sadness, anger, fear, disgust. And these little characters, little cartoon characters, have this giant control panel in her brain with lights and knobs and levers. In general, joy is in charge, but at appropriate times, sadness takes over the control board, or anger. Sadness is a little blue woman that's kind of hunched over and depressed, and anger is this little red man with like a loosened tie, right? And every now and then his head explodes and like turns into fire. Lots of fun. In Inside Out 2, Riley goes through puberty, and all these new emotional characters join the cast: anxiety, envy, embarrassment, and ennui, or boredom. A key premise of the Inside Out movies is that every so often, a mechanism inside the control room of Riley's brain creates what's called a core memory, which is represented as an orb that just sort of appears. And these are things that are so intense, or positively or negatively, that they shape Riley's personality. They become part of who she is. And these orbs are colored. So if it's a joyful memory, it's a color of joy. And if it's a sad memory, it's a color of sadness. And hopefully she'll have more, you're kind of rooting for her to have more joyful memories than any others. At a pivotal moment in the first movie, Riley matures at the end and produces her first mixed emotion memory, her mixed emotion core memory. She tries to run away from home. She gets on a bus and tries to go back to Minnesota. She gets in danger. She's very scared. She eventually is reunited with her parents. It was all of these complex emotions. And so it's her first memory, this orb that's multiple colors, and there's multiple complexity. So I have a memory that I believe is a core memory for me that has lots of mixed emotions around it, that I believe shaped who I am, in particular around issues of race and racism. When I was in 9th grade, where I grew up was in middle school, so I was the last year of middle school, I was being bullied. And the bully was a black boy named Kendall. I didn't have a lot of exposure to black people. My middle school was predominantly white. We lived on the east coast of Florida in a beach town, and almost all the people in our Florida beach town were white. But for integration purposes, they would take a bus full of black children from the mainland and bus them to our school. Kendall was in that group. I was a pretty awkward kid. I wasn't very coordinated, but I was big. So I think I was a tempting target for a bully, like a big kid who wasn't a good fighter. But I also know I unintentionally made myself a target with Kendall, partly because I thought he was really cool. Like, he was the star of the football team, he was super athletic, he was a leader in his group. All of his group were the black kids, and he was a leader in that group. And he wore this thick gold chain. And one day I went up to him in front of his friends with all of the best intentions and said, "Kendall, I really like your gold chain." And I could just see it in his face. I don't know if he thought I was making fun of him, or if he was just embarrassed by the attention that I was drawing to him in front of his friends. But from that moment on, he had it out for me. And like passing him in the hallways, he would like lurch at me to scare me, or sometimes he even chased me. One day, he and his friends cornered me in a bathroom, and I was just able to get away without having my head put in a toilet. But it was a close call. I like had to bust through a line of his friends to get out the door. At the same time all this drama was unfolding with Kendall, I was developing a friendship with a boy named Jerry, who was also black. But Jerry lived in our neighborhood. He was maybe the only black family in our town, I don't know. But Jerry was extremely cool. And everyone liked Jerry, and for some reason, Jerry liked me. and we ended up spending time together and doing things outside of school. And one night, on a Friday night, Jerry and I went to a football game. And we were walking around under the bleachers at halftime, and Kendall came up behind us with his friends. Kendall put his hand on my shoulder, spun me around, and hit me hard in the face. And I mean, he was a middle school boy, so it wasn't like a knockout punch, but it was enough to send me reeling and staggering and blurred my vision a little bit. And I didn't see it coming. So when I finally kind of got, my feet, there was a blurry Kendall in front of me. And the next thing that happened is he hit me in the face again. I don't remember anything after that until, and I don't know how much time passed, probably not much, until Jerry came into focus. Jerry was holding me by both my shoulders, shaking me and saying, "Tom, run." And so I ran like Forrest Gump. I just ran. I ran out of the stadium. I ran down the street. I ran into a local McDonald's and found a group of friends sitting at the McDonald's, and I sat next to them and pretended like nothing had happened. And they're like, "Why are you out of breath?" I was like, "Oh, nothing, I don't know, just for a run." So that's a core memory. All of that, I think, is one core memory, but obviously it's mixed. And I think it shaped how I think about race in a couple ways. One is that on some level that I'm still was barely conscious of, and still probably is true today, I do have like this deep fear or anxiety related to Black men. Kendall wasn't a man, but in my memory, he was this big Black person. And so that's going to be true for me, I think, for a long time. I've done a lot of work around it and overcome it, but it's always going to be there. The other way it shaped me on a profound level is that I have a deep-seated knowledge that the color of Kendall and Jerry's skin was not what defined them. That Kendall wasn't mean or violent because he was Black, and that Jerry wasn't kind and loyal and protective because he was Black. So it was this profound, emotionally intense moment where I had a relatively small sample size of what Black people were like, and one of those people was trying to hurt me, and one was trying to help me. So that any conclusion that I could have drawn based on Kendall's race was impossible to draw because of Jerry. One thing the Inside Out movies doesn't totally capture about human developmental psychology is that we as human beings have two parts to our brain. We have lots of parts, but two parts that really drive us. One is the amygdala, which controls our emotions on a very deep unconscious level. It controls our fight or flight, but it also controls our safety and our trust and our love. The other is, they say, more recently evolved, the prefrontal cortex, which is where we have our higher analysis, our emotional regulation, our moral reasoning, and our judgment. In my example, both Kendall and Jerry are core memories that are implanted in my amygdala. Kendall is a memory of a Black person who scared me and attacked me. Jerry is implanted as a Black person who was kind and protective. And my prefrontal cortex has to sort all that out all the time. We have very little control over our amygdalas. There's a part of me that may always see a Black man, especially a strong, athletic Black man, which again, Kendall wasn't, but that's what I carry with me, that sees a man like that and it triggers something. My amygdala will immediately, before I'm aware, before I'm conscious, produce stress hormones and send those into my bloodstream in a matter of milliseconds. And then the rational part of my brain will have to do its work in that altered emotional state. In a way, I'm operating in an emotional deficit in some situations. And I think that's what unconscious bias is. Even if we know that a person cannot be judged by the color of their skin, our amygdalas, for any number of reasons, will have us operating in a deficit of stereotypes. This is why, for instance, white doctors consistently give Black and Hispanic patients less pain medicine than white patients. That's been an established fact, study documented fact. Even though the doctors are not conscious that they're doing it, they would never say that they were doing that, and they don't do it consciously. It happens, it's true. It's the way that real estate appraisers will appraise homes with pictures of people of color at a lower value than homes with pictures of white people on the walls. They don't do it consciously, it just happens. And I think if we were to drill down, surely not every white doctor and every real estate appraiser has had profound life-changing experiences with people of color in a way that influences those biases. So I don't think that explains it all. That something else in our society must be at work besides particular experiences that we may or may not have had. Our perceptions of race are shaped by more than our conscious experiences. I think that's something else that's at work in our society that shapes us is a culture of white supremacy. Now, when you hear white supremacist, you may think Ku Klux Klan or Aryan Nation or Nazis or any of those grosser examples. But white supremacy is something that's much broader and more nuanced as a phenomena than any particular group. White supremacy in the US is all around us. It's the way white features are considered more beautiful by society than the features of people of color. No one ever tells you that. Whether you're white or a person of color, no one ever tells you that, but we can absorb it. White facial features, hair, body shape dominate our media. Even among people of color, light skin is often considered more desirable than dark skin. In 2024, $8.6 billion was spent globally on skin lightening products. White supremacy infuses our culture in our media, in our news, what stories get published, what stories lead in the news, in politics, and who represents us, wealth distribution, who are the wealthy, educational opportunities, access to healthy environments, job opportunities. In America in particular, but more and more globally, we grow up breathing the air of whiteness. We grow up drinking the water of whiteness. If we're thinking about Inside Out movies, this would be also something the movie doesn't capture. What is Riley absorbing every day, not in her intense memories, but just in the air she breathes about beauty standards, about who to fear, about who has value? What is she absorbing in more subtle ways, the way her teachers treat children differently based on their skin color? If we were portraying this through the movie's metaphor, white supremacy might be portrayed as a paleness over every experience she has, a paleness over every experience every child in America has. So in the movie, when any memory, core memory or otherwise is generated and that little ball is formed with colors that represent joy and sadness and anger, in a white supremacist society, all those colors are paler because the influence of whiteness on our personalities. We are all affected by this unnatural paleness. And that's why it's not enough just for us to say, but I'm not racist. That white supremacy stains our personality with a paleness we don't perceive. And so that's why when we have to use language like anti-racism or anti-racist, we acknowledge that when it comes to racism, we're all starting from a deficit of stereotypes that go beyond our conscious individual thinking, which may seem impossible to overcome. But I think our Bible passage today gives us a starting point. Psalm 139, we read the last two verses of it, and it's an invitation, it's a prayer. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my thoughts. See if there is any wicked way in me and lead me in the way everlasting. The invitation of the psalmist is to go deep, to pay attention to our thoughts, even the ones that come without our meaning to pay attention, to be mindful of our feelings, what ways is our amygdala setting the stage for our interactions with people before we realize it? What patterns, what stereotypes, what feelings does our brain serve up to us before we even have a chance to think? And isn't it interesting that attentiveness and mindfulness, the first thing that we can do as we approach this problem, that these things are basic spiritual practices, the things that we're supposed to be doing anyway as people of faith. When we do this work, we cannot be defensive. We have to be humble. We have to know that we have all been shaped by forces that are beyond our control, that we are good, valuable people, but we are damaged we have been damaged by a culture of white supremacy. The word in the passage, wicked, see that there is no wicked way in me, that can also be translated as hurtful. May there be no way in me that causes harm to others. It can also be translated as idolatrous. See that there isn't any idolatrous way in me. Is there anything in me that has absorbed the lie that one group of people is superior to another, that makes an idol out of one group? Is there any way in me that has absorbed lies about people of color about people based on their skin color? And then the passage says, lead me in the way everlasting. Anti-racism is this task that requires our dedication as well as a power greater than ourselves. That we're asking for spiritual guidance, but we also have to do the work. And that's where the Romans passage comes in. It says, do not be conformed to this age. Do not be conformed to a culture of white supremacy that defines everything from a person's beauty to a person's worth by the color of their skin. Do not be conformed to that society, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. And we do need God's help in this process, but we also can do very practical things as we attempt to renew our minds. Our minds are malleable. We are never done shaping who we are. We're never done trying to be better people. It doesn't matter how old you are. That's just what I was taught. I'm too old is a lazy excuse. Life is too precious and too short to say we are too old to change, and there's too much at stake. So what are the practical steps for transforming our minds, including our amygdalas? First is that awareness, that mindfulness of what's happening here, what's happening here. And then another step is just education. Reading books is a great step, watching videos, some great books, How to Be an Anti-Racist, White Fragility, Caste. My Grandmother's Hands has been recommended to me recently by the anti-racism team. I haven't read that one. But educating ourselves, filling up that prefrontal cortex with good information. Another step is exposure. The more interaction we have with people of different races, the more our rational brains will be unable to tolerate the lies of stereotypes coming from our amygdalas. If you don't know people of a lot of other races, you can start by watching movies of people by and of and about other races. Media is often the problem. Make it part of the solution. But ultimately, what we need is not just exposure, but relationships, to really know people of diverse races. And this isn't just about having one Black friend. It's about getting to know lots of different people. What are they like? What are their families like? What struggles do their families have? What TV shows do they like? What books do they like? What do they think is funny? What kind of music do they listen to? I'm on a bit of a journey right now around Muslim people, which I know is not a race, but I definitely have a stereotype of what Muslim is in my mind. And as I've been going to visit the Stanford hunger strikers in the evenings, many of whom are Muslim, many Muslims gathered there, it's just clear how much diversity there is in that community. And that Amygdalian image of Muslim in my brain is crumbling whenever I'm exposed to more and more people who represent that faith. It's interesting that our goals as a church include being anti-racist and being multi-ethnic, because there's a bit of a chicken and an egg thing that's going to happen there. Those two are going to feed off each other and support each other. Like the more racial and other diversity we have in the congregation as a community, the more exposure we'll have to each other, the more real relationships we can start building with each other, the more anti-racist we will be. And the more intentional anti-racist personal work that we all do, the more likely we will be to be a welcoming community for all people and become truly multi-ethnic. One of the things that the anti-racism team has been talking about, we've wondered, what can we do in the sanctuary to sort of communicate what we're that we're a welcoming place, that we're a loving place, and we've came up with, some ideas, banners and art and things. But the most important thing, even in those discussions, and this has come up in the conversation, no matter what you put up on the walls, the most important thing that we can do is for each member to be doing the work. for each member to be examining our hearts, for each member to be trying to renew our minds when it comes to race and racial stereotypes. You can have, like my church in Baltimore, white Jesuses and white angels all around us, and if we can be an anti-racist people, it's going to be enough. Being anti-racist is not about being woke. Not that there's anything wrong with being woke. Being anti-racist is about awareness of our thinking, awareness of our feelings, awareness of the lies that we have come to believe consciously or unconsciously, awareness of the deficit that we start in as Americans. It's about searching our hearts and minds with humility. It's about exposure to diverse people. It's about going deeper in our relationships with diverse people. It's about reprogramming our stubborn little amygdalas. And really what it's about, at its most basic level, is loving our neighbors better, which if we do it well, if we love our neighbors well in a white supremacist society, will be a radically countercultural action. Do not be conformed to this age. Do not be conformed to white supremacy, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, all the way down to your amygdalas. Amen.